9 steps to feel safe inside and trust yourself again. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt disconnected from yourself, like your inner world no longer feels safe to rest in? In a time when the world moves faster than our hearts can follow, learning to rebuild trust within ourselves isn't just healing, it's liberation. In today's video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore 9 powerful steps to feel safe inside and trust yourself again, so you can move through life with peace, confidence, and clarity. As you listen, ask yourself, which part of you is still waiting to feel safe enough to shine? Comment below. With your thoughts, your journey may inspire someone else's healing. 1. Listening to the quiet voice within. You've spent so many years surviving instead of living, holding your breath through every storm, waiting for the world to feel safe before you could finally exhale. Yet as Carl Jung said, what you resist not only persists, but grows stronger. The fears you try to bury, the emotions you refuse to feel, they don't disappear. They linger quietly in your body, shaping your decisions, your relationships, and the way you see yourself. The first step towards spiritual awakening is not escaping your pain, but listening to it, not suppressing your emotions, but understanding what they're trying to tell you. This is where healing begins, when you stop running from yourself and start listening to the gentle whisper that has always been guiding you from within. That inner voice is subtle, yet powerful. It doesn't compete with the noise of the world or the criticism in your mind. It speaks softly, through intuition, through the quiet pull in your heart that says, "This is right for me," or "Something here doesn't feel true." It is the voice of your soul, calm and kind, waiting for you to remember it exists. The loud voice of fear will always demand your attention. It's anxious, impatient, and judgmental. But the quiet one, the one that feels like peace, even when life feels uncertain, that's the voice of truth. Spiritual wisdom teaches that listening to this voice is the foundation of trust in life, trust in your path, and most importantly, trust in yourself. To feel safe inside again, you must learn to listen without judgment. When fear arises, don't silence it or fight it. Instead, meet it with compassion, the same way you would comfort a frightened child. This gentle approach transforms fear into understanding, and understanding into self-trust. Carl Jung believed that the soul speaks through symbols, emotions, and dreams. And when you give yourself permission to listen, you reconnect with that deep intelligence that never stopped guiding you. Every time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, you create a small miracle. You tell your body and mind, "It's safe to rest now. It's safe to be me." Over time, this consistent act of inner listening becomes a spiritual practice. You begin to realize that spirituality is not about escaping reality, but about being fully present in it, breathing, observing, and responding from a place of love instead of fear. Spiritual awakening is not a dramatic event. It's the slow, tender process of remembering who you are beyond the noise, the trauma, and the survival patterns. You start to notice that your peace doesn't depend on external control, but on internal alignment. You begin to trust that the same energy that moves the stars and tides also moves through you, whispering, "You are safe. You are loved. You are enough." Each time you pause to listen to that voice, you rebuild your inner foundation. You begin to trust your own timing, your own rhythm, your own sense of what feels right. The outer world may still test you, but the storms no longer define you because your roots are deep within your own being. This is the essence of spiritual awakening, realizing that safety isn't something you find, it's something you remember. And when you return to that quiet place inside, where your soul gently speaks and your heart finally feels at home, you awaken to the truth that trust was never lost. It was only waiting for you to listen. 2. Understanding the inner walls. The walls you built within yourself were never mistakes. They were sacred forms of protection, silent witnesses of your strength during moments when life felt unsafe or uncertain. Carl Jung reminds us that these defenses are not enemies to destroy, but memories of survival, evidence of how the soul adapted to protect what was most vulnerable. When you stop fighting them and instead sit beside them with understanding, something shifts. You begin to see that healing doesn't happen by force. It unfolds through compassion, through the gentle act of thanking your defenses for keeping you safe when you didn't know how to protect yourself. When you learn to approach your inner barriers with tenderness, they start to lose their heaviness. You realize they were never meant to imprison you, but to guard the fragile parts of your heart until you were strong enough to face life again. In spirituality and spiritual development, this is the sacred turning point when you stop running from your pain and start listening to it. The walls that once kept the world out begin to reveal their purpose. They were not built out of weakness, but out of a deep instinct for survival. Every wall holds a story, a moment of fear, loss, or betrayal that shaped the way you learned to protect yourself. Instead of judging these stories, learn to honor them. Behind each defense lies a younger version of you, scared yet deeply wise. When you meet this version with love instead of criticism, you begin to integrate the fragments of your soul that were once scattered by pain. This is the essence of Jung's teaching on individuation, the journey toward wholeness through embracing every part of yourself, including the wounded and hidden ones. The more you resist your defenses, the more power they hold. But the moment you acknowledge them with love, they begin to dissolve, not as enemies defeated, but as guardians finally at rest. When old patterns rise, the urge to retreat, to overthink, to control pause, and whisper inwardly, "Thank you for protecting me when I couldn't protect myself." This is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. Through gratitude, you rewire your relationship with pain. Through compassion, you transform resistance into acceptance. Gradually, your walls no longer confine you. They evolve into sacred boundaries that honor your peace and protect your energy. Your inner world softens when love becomes your foundation. You start to live with more trust, more openness, and more awareness of your inner power. The walls that once separated you from others become bridges to deeper understanding. In the light of spirituality, every defense turns into wisdom, every scar into strength. And as your heart learns to feel safe again within itself, you rediscover the quiet truth that healing was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering that you were always whole, even when hidden behind your walls. If this message resonates with your soul, say it out loud. I am ready to break down my inner walls. I am safe within myself, and I trust the wisdom that guides me. 3. The gift of slowing down. Carl Jung once said, "Hurry is not of the soul," reminding us that when we slow down, we don't lose time. We return to ourselves. In a world obsessed with speed, constant noise, and endless achievement, slowing down becomes an act of rebellion and healing. It allows your nervous system to remember peace, your mind to find clarity, and your soul to breathe again. When you stop rushing to become someone or to reach somewhere, you realize that presence is not the absence of action. It's the alignment of your being with the rhythm of life itself. Rest is not laziness. It's presence in its purest form. Every time you pause to breathe, to feel, to notice the world around you, you strengthen your connection with the only moment that truly exists, this one. In stillness, something magical happens. You begin to reconnect with your body, your breath, and your essence. You start to feel what you've been avoiding and see what's been waiting to be acknowledged. You discover that safety isn't found in control, success, or certainty. It's found in calm awareness, in the simple knowing that you are okay right here and now. This awareness becomes a quiet sanctuary inside you, a space untouched by chaos, where peace lives not as an idea, but as a living presence. As you slow down, the walls between your conscious and unconscious begin to soften. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that it's only in stillness that the voice of the unconscious can rise to the surface. The more you listen, the more you understand the language of your own soul, whispering what it truly needs to feel whole again. Every slow breath is a bridge that brings you back home to yourself. You begin to feel grounded in your body, rooted in the now, no longer chasing or running from life. The world outside might still spin at its usual speed, but inside, you create a rhythm that's steady and safe. You stop treating rest as something you must earn and start recognizing it as your birthright. The paradox is that by slowing down, you actually begin to move with more purpose, clarity, and grace. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer hurry, you harmonize. You realize that peace was never missing. It was just buried beneath the rush to become someone you already are. And as you honor stillness more deeply, you find that time expands. The small moments, a warm ray of sunlight, the sound of your breath, the beat of your heart, become sacred again. You start to trust that everything unfolds in divine timing, that you don't need to force what's meant for you. In that surrender, you awaken to a quiet truth. The soul was never meant to race. It was meant to remember. To feel safe inside is to know that life moves through you, not against you. When you slow down enough to truly listen, you realize that peace is not something defined. It's something you return to again and again in the stillness of your own being. 4. Meeting your inner child. Your younger self still lives deep within you, quietly holding the memories of what love and safety once meant. That child remembers moments of joy, laughter, and warmth, but also the times when trust was broken, when love felt uncertain, and when fear became the only form of protection. Carl Jung once said, "In every adult, there lurks a child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming." To meet that inner child is to meet the forgotten truth of your soul. It's not about going back to the past, but reclaiming the part of you that still believes in tenderness, curiosity, and wonder. This is not only psychology, it is spirituality in its purest form, the sacred journey of returning home to yourself. When you approach your inner child with gentleness, you begin to rewrite the emotional story that shaped you. Whisper softly to them, "You're safe now." With those words, the old tension starts to melt. The body relaxes. The heart opens. You are telling every cell in your being that the chaos is over. This act of self-reassurance becomes the foundation of healing. It is a quiet yet powerful declaration that love no longer depends on others. It flows from within. Through this awareness, you step into spiritual awakening, where peace replaces survival and softness replaces fear. The inner child carries both your pain and your potential. Jung believed that wholeness comes not from perfection, but from integration, uniting the child and the adult, the joy and the sorrow, the shadow and the light. By embracing the parts of yourself you once denied, you dissolve the walls between who you were and who you are becoming. This merging of opposites is what allows your soul to expand. It is not about fixing the past, but about understanding that every wound once held wisdom. Every heartbreak taught resilience, and every moment of fear was only a call for love. As you reconnect with that younger version of yourself, old emotions may surface. Perhaps tears, perhaps laughter, perhaps a silence so deep it feels like time itself is breathing through you. Don't turn away. Sit with it. Listen to the voice that says, "I'm scared," or "I miss being loved." Then from the strength of your present self, answer softly, "I'm here now." This dialogue between your past and present self builds a bridge of trust inside you. Slowly, that trust becomes your anchor. It allows you to walk through life grounded, calm, and open-hearted. In this sacred meeting between your inner child and your awakened self, transformation unfolds naturally. The creativity that once hid behind fear begins to rise again. The playfulness you thought you lost starts to return. The heart remembers how to trust, and through it all, you realize that your spiritual awakening is not about escaping pain, but about embracing it with love so complete that nothing remains unloved. Your inner child does not need saving. They only need to be seen. When you finally see them, when you hold them without judgment, the fragmented parts of your soul begin to unite. And in that unity, you rediscover the radiant wholeness that was always waiting for you. Have you ever tried to reconnect with your inner child? The part of you that still believes, still dreams, and still feels deeply? If you have, share what you discovered in the comments below so others can be inspired by your healing journey. If not, comment, "I will begin," to take this first gentle step toward trusting yourself again. 5. Allowing feelings to breathe. Feelings don't disappear when you ignore them. They wait patiently beneath the surface, longing to be acknowledged. As Carl Jung wisely said, "What we resist persists." Every emotion you experience carries a hidden message meant to guide your spiritual development and inner balance. Sadness softly whispers that you need rest. Fear calls for reassurance and safety. Anger seeks understanding and clarity. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, you create space for healing to unfold naturally. Instead of labeling emotions as good or bad, let them breathe, let them speak, and let them move through you like waves returning to the ocean. Suppression traps pain inside the body, but awareness sets it free. This is not about indulging emotions or drowning in them. It's about allowing them to exist, to move, and to teach you what they came to show. Every feeling has its own rhythm, and when you breathe with it rather than fight it, transformation begins. Take sadness when you allow it to flow. It cleanses the heart and restores peace. Letting fear be seen brings courage, because facing it reveals your own strength. Meeting anger with compassion turns fire into power, showing you where your truth has been silenced. When you treat emotions as sacred messengers instead of burdens, you stop being a prisoner of your inner storms. You become the calm center that observes without losing control. This practice is the essence of spirituality, not escaping the human experience, but embracing it fully until it becomes a doorway to wisdom. So when discomfort rises, breathe deeply and remind yourself, this too is energy wanting to move. Speak kindly to your feelings. Tell your fear it's safe to relax. Tell your sadness it can rest now. Tell your anger that you're listening. As you do, the heaviness starts to lift, because emotions lose their power when they are met with awareness. Integration begins here when you stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. You learn that feeling deeply does not make you weak. It makes you real, alive, and whole. In this gentle surrender, you begin to feel safe inside your own being again. And that is where true spiritual development takes root, in the quiet courage to let your heart feel, heal, and finally breathe. 6. The power of honest reflection. Healing begins when you find the courage to face yourself with honesty and tenderness, because true transformation doesn't happen through pretending to be fine, but through the quiet bravery of acknowledging what hurts. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." These words carry timeless spiritual wisdom, reminding you that inner light is not something you chase. It's something that appears naturally when you stop running from your shadows. Honest reflection is not about blaming yourself or labeling your pain. It's about saying to yourself, this is what I feel. This is where I am. In that moment of gentle awareness, shame begins to loosen its grip, and what was once heavy starts to feel lighter. When you sit in stillness and allow your truth to surface, you begin to see that your wounds were never your weakness. They were your teachers. Jung believed that what we fail to make conscious will continue to shape our lives without our awareness, and we will call it fate. This means that every time you face your fears, instead of suppressing them, you take your power back. Every time you listen to your sadness, instead of judging it, you invite healing into the places that once felt forgotten. Honest reflection opens the doorway between who you are now and who you are becoming, teaching you that awareness itself is the medicine your soul has been waiting for. To reflect honestly is to meet yourself with compassion instead of criticism. It's sitting quietly and saying, I see the fear, I see the anger, I see the grief, and I still accept myself. In that act of self-acceptance, your nervous system relaxes, your heart softens, and your spirit begins to remember what safety feels like. You start to trust yourself again, because you no longer abandon your emotions when they arise. You realize that healing doesn't mean never feeling pain again. It means no longer fearing the presence of pain. Through this process, what was once dark begins to reveal its hidden beauty, and what was once chaotic begins to make sense. Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us that enlightenment is not about perfection, but wholeness. To make the darkness conscious is to honor every part of your being, the one who is learning, the one who is tired, the one who is still afraid. As you bring these parts into awareness, something miraculous happens. Shame dissolves, and peace quietly enters. The more you allow yourself to see clearly, the less you need to hide. And in that clarity, you find freedom, the kind that no one can give or take away. The truth is, you don't heal by becoming someone new. You heal by remembering who you already are beneath the layers of protection. So, when you feel lost or uncertain, return to yourself. Sit with your feelings without running. Listen without judgment, and breathe into your truth. You will begin to notice that your reflection, once filled with pain, now carries light. For as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Through honest reflection, you no longer let fate control you. You become the conscious author of your own becoming. If this message about honest reflection spoke to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's grow together in truth and spiritual wisdom, one honest reflection at a time. 7. The beauty of boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers. They are sacred expressions of self-respect and emotional clarity. As Carl Jung taught, wholeness is the art of living in alignment with your true self, not the self shaped by fear, guilt, or the need for approval, but the one that knows peace is more valuable than being liked. When you honor your limits, you are sending a message to your soul that your inner harmony matters more than external validation. This is not selfishness, it's self-preservation. It's a form of spiritual awakening that teaches you to value stillness over chaos, authenticity over pleasing others, and peace over performance. Your boundaries become invisible threads of energy that define where you end and the world begins, allowing your heart to rest in safety and your spirit to breathe freely. Boundaries are not cold lines that push people away. They are living bridges that connect your soul to truth. Every no you speak from a calm heart becomes an affirmation of your worth, and every yes you give from alignment becomes a gesture of love. When you learn to say no without guilt and yes without fear, you step into spiritual wisdom, the kind that flows from deep inner awareness. It's the realization that your energy is sacred and that what you allow into your life shapes the rhythm of your entire being. A weak boundary scatters your energy, but a clear one gathers it back into power. It's like the riverbanks that hold the flow of water. Boundaries don't stop the current, they guide it. Carl Jung reminded us that healing the psyche requires integrating the shadow of those hidden aspects we once abandoned to survive. Setting boundaries is one of the most loving ways to begin that integration. When you draw a line and say, "This is what I need to feel safe," you are reclaiming your inner child, protecting the part of you that once felt unseen or overextended. That act of self-protection becomes an act of self-love. And self-love is the beginning of every true spiritual awakening. You start to understand that safety doesn't come from others agreeing with your choices. It comes from trusting yourself enough to stand by them. Boundaries turn fear into faith that your truth is enough, that your peace is worth guarding, and that your energy deserves to be honored. As you deepen in this awareness, you'll notice that your relationships begin to shift. Those who are meant to walk with you will honor your boundaries because they sense the respect you hold for yourself. Those who cannot will naturally drift away, and you will bless them without resentment. The moment you stop abandoning yourself for others is the moment the universe stops sending lessons of betrayal and begins sending mirrors of respect. This is the quiet power of spiritual wisdom, knowing that the world outside you rearranges itself to match the peace within you. Every time you choose yourself with love instead of fear, you rise higher in consciousness. Boundaries, then, are not walls that divide. They are the architecture of inner freedom, the structure through which your soul learns to live with both openness and strength. 8. Reconnecting with the present moment. Safety doesn't exist in the past or the future. It only exists in this moment. The mind loves to wander between what was and what could be, but the soul only breathes now. Carl Jung said, "Those who look outside dream. Those who look inside awaken." And this awakening happens the moment you stop chasing after control and begin to feel what is right in front of you. In this breath, in this heartbeat, in the quiet rhythm of being alive, you return to the simplicity of existence. Stillness is not emptiness. It's the hidden home of your spirit, the space where peace begins to speak softly again after years of noise. When you allow yourself to simply be without judging, fixing, or rushing, you reconnect with the core of your being, the silent presence that never left you. In spirituality, the greatest act of courage is not to conquer your fears, but to come back to yourself over and over again, to feel the air entering your lungs, to sense the pulse within your chest, and to witness your thoughts without drowning in them. When you do, life no longer feels like something to survive, but something to experience. The present moment becomes a sacred bridge that leads you out of anxiety and back into trust. It teaches you that peace is not earned through effort. It is revealed through awareness. You start to understand that control is an illusion, and that safety is not something you build around you, but something you awaken within you. This is spiritual development in its truest form, the gradual remembering that you were never broken, only distracted. As you breathe deeper into the now, your nervous system softens, your thoughts lose their sharp edges, and your heart begins to trust its own rhythm again. The more you practice presence, the more your body feels like home. You learn to respond instead of react, to listen instead of escape, and to live instead of merely exist. Even in silence, you begin to feel a quiet dialogue between your soul and the universe, a conversation that reminds you that everything is connected and you are held by something greater than fear. Spirituality, then, is not an escape from reality, but the art of living fully inside it. When you return to this moment with gentleness, life greets you with calm clarity. You stop searching for safety outside yourself and realize that it has always been waiting here in your breath, your awareness, your stillness. And from this sacred place, the journey of trusting yourself begins again. To reaffirm your connection to the present, take a deep breath and anchor yourself here now. Comment below, "I am fully present," to declare your intention to live with awareness and inspire others to do the same. 9. Letting yourself be seen, even by you. Stop trying to fix yourself and start learning how to truly see yourself. When you finally stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and gently whisper, "What if I don't need to be fixed?" something deep inside begins to breathe again. In this quiet moment of surrender, you realize that healing is not about changing who you are, but about meeting yourself exactly where you are. As Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us, wholeness is found not in perfection, but in embracing opposites light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, courage and fear. Every part of you deserves to exist. When you stop rejecting your emotions and instead listen to what they are trying to tell you, you transform pain into understanding and chaos into clarity. You begin to understand that acceptance doesn't stop growth. It refines it. Acceptance is what allows growth to evolve into peace. You no longer chase safety in people, achievements, or validation because you begin to sense that safety has always been within you, waiting for your permission to return. You learn to soothe yourself with gentleness instead of judgment. When anxiety rises, you take a deep breath and whisper, "I am here for you." When your mind criticizes, you respond with compassion instead of punishment. Each small act of kindness toward yourself becomes a brick in the foundation of inner security. And when the old patterns appear, the perfectionism, the self-blame, the fear of being seen, you no longer fight them. You observe them with curiosity and ask, "What are you protecting me from?" That question alone shifts everything. It turns your inner critic into a wounded child simply asking for safety. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You stop trying to erase your past or hide your scars because they are not proof of your brokenness, but evidence of your becoming. You begin to live from a softer strength, one that does not need to prove, perform, or please. With time, you understand that letting yourself be seen does not mean exposing your pain to everyone. It means refusing to hide from yourself. It means standing before the mirror and saying, "I see you. I'm staying." That is self-trust. That is the moment your heart starts to feel safe again. Acceptance becomes your daily practice, not a final goal, but a way of living, breathing, and relating to the world. And as you keep choosing this softness, you discover the truth Jung always hinted at. Safety was never something to find outside. It was, and always will be, the quiet strength that lives faithfully within you. True healing begins when you no longer seek safety outside of yourself, but remember that peace was within you all along. Every time you choose self-trust over fear, you rebuild the foundation of your inner world. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So, let this be your reminder: you are safe, you are guided, and you already have everything you need within. If this message spoke to your soul, please like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming videos. Together, let's continue this journey of awakening and self-trust. Carl Jung's warning: the final trap that stops your spiritual awakening. Beware of unearned wisdom. Carl Jung. In this video, we'll explore one of Jung's most profound warnings: the final trap that stops your spiritual awakening. Many seekers believe enlightenment is a straight path upward, but Jung reminds us that the closer we come to light, the more seductive the shadows become. True awakening demands humility, discernment, and self-honesty, not spiritual superiority. As you listen, ask yourself, have you mistaken knowledge for transformation? Have you fallen into the illusion of being awake while still trapped in the ego's disguise? Share your reflections in the comments, and let's begin this journey together. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we dive deep into the mysteries of the mind and soul. 1. The illusion of enlightenment. The greatest trap in spiritual awakening is not darkness, but false light. The illusion of enlightenment that disguises itself as truth. This is the deception that Carl Jung warned about, the ego's final trick, where it silently takes ownership of awakening and turns it into a new identity. You begin your journey with sincerity, searching for meaning, trying to heal your pain, and gradually becoming more aware and compassionate. But as your awareness grows, a subtle shift occurs. The ego-clever and patient ego changes its mask and begins to whisper, "You are awakened now. You are different from the rest." What once was a path toward liberation becomes a mirror of spiritual pride, and instead of freeing the soul, it tightens the chains. The illusion of enlightenment is seductive because it feels peaceful, radiant, and pure. You feel lighter, more intuitive, more conscious than before. And yet this very glow can blind you to the work that remains undone. The ego feeds on this light, building a new self-image, the enlightened self that thrives on subtle superiority. You start comparing your awareness to others, assuming that because you've seen beyond illusion, you are beyond correction. The truth, however, is that real spirituality dismantles every identity, even the spiritual one. It humbles you until nothing remains to defend. And yet false light does the opposite. It reinforces the need to be seen as wise, compassionate, and awakened, creating a quiet hunger for recognition disguised as humility. This is what Jung called the final snare, believing you have already escaped. When you start saying, "I've transcended my ego," it often means your ego has merely evolved. It no longer hides in anger or greed. It hides in spiritual language, in the quiet superiority of the awakened persona. You may speak of oneness while secretly judging those who are still asleep. You may use phrases like, "I only attract high vibrations," as a way to avoid empathy, or "protect my peace," when you are simply avoiding growth. The false light convinces you that spiritual experiences, visions, synchronicities, or insights make you special. But authentic awakening doesn't make you feel special. It makes you humble. It strips away illusions until only truth remains, and truth is often uncomfortable, raw, and painfully honest. True spirituality is not about being untouchable or transcending humanity. It is about embracing it fully. It's the ability to walk through your own shadows without denial, to listen instead of preach, to love without needing to control. The illusion of enlightenment keeps you talking about light while refusing to face the darkness still within. Jung reminds us that what we refuse to see in ourselves will return as our fate, meaning that any unexamined shadow will quietly rule us from behind the scenes. The moment you believe you are finished, that you have arrived, is the moment you stop evolving. The real journey of spiritual awakening is continuous surrender. It asks you not to proclaim enlightenment, but to embody humility. It invites you to question where you are still hiding behind spiritual language or identity. It teaches that awakening is not a title to earn, but a way of living truth, moment by moment. And when you finally see through the illusion of false light, you discover that the path was never about becoming divine. It was about remembering your humanity, your vulnerability, and your endless capacity for love. 2. The Demiurge's Labyrinth of Mirrors. In Gnostic teachings, the demiurge is described as a blind creator who built a counterfeit universe, a labyrinth of mirrors that imitates the divine. He doesn't create true light. He manufactures reflections, illusions that captivate both the ignorant and the awakened. Every light in his realm casts a shadow, and even what appears as spiritual truth can be a form of deception. This warning strikes deeply in the heart of spirituality and spiritual development, because the greatest trap is not ignorance, it is false enlightenment. The demiurge's labyrinth is not somewhere outside you. It lives within every illusion of spiritual superiority, every desire to appear awakened rather than to be awakened. When you seek spiritual recognition, validation, or the comfort of belonging to a higher group, you may unknowingly enter his maze, where mirrors reflect not your soul, but your ego dressed in sacred language. You might chase endless teachers, books, and methods thinking you're ascending, yet you're simply polishing the same mask. The demiurge whispers through imitation. He tells you what you want to hear, not what you need to face. He convinces you that collecting wisdom is the same as embodying it, that knowing is the same as being. In truth, his greatest trick is keeping you busy with light so busy that you forget to face your own shadow. Because every reflection in his labyrinth is designed to delay your inner work, to distract you from the silence where true transformation begins. In genuine spirituality, there is no race to arrive, no prize for appearing holy. There is only an ongoing surrender, a returning to what is real. Real awakening feels less like expansion and more like humility. It is not about building a spiritual identity. It is about dissolving the identities that confine you. It asks you to look beyond appearances, to ask yourself with honesty, am I growing more compassionate or merely more clever in spiritual disguise? When you meditate, when you speak of love and light, do you truly meet yourself, or do you escape into beautiful words that hide the unhealed parts of you? The demiurge's labyrinth feeds on pretense, on the idea that spirituality is a performance. But true spiritual development requires you to see through every reflection that flatters the ego. It asks you to face the darkness within you with courage and tenderness, to stand in your truth without adornment. The real path is not glamorous. It humbles you, grounds you, and transforms your suffering into awareness. It teaches you that enlightenment is not about becoming someone special. It is about becoming someone real. So as you continue your journey, remember this truth. Not all light is pure, and not every teacher leads to freedom. Test every idea by the peace it brings, by the love it awakens, and by the honesty it demands. The mirrors will always try to seduce you, but when you choose truth over illusion, when you listen to your soul instead of your ego, the labyrinth begins to dissolve, and what remains is the divine light that never needed reflection to be real. Comment below. I see through the illusion. If you're ready to step beyond the demiurge's labyrinth of mirrors and reclaim your true spiritual awareness. 3. The ego as the demiurge's ally. The ego, as Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom revealed, is not your enemy in form, but your greatest deceiver in disguise. It does not overthrow your consciousness by force. It conquers through agreement, through the seductive illusion of being special, superior, or more awakened than others. Like the demiurge, the false creator who rules through illusion rather than truth, the ego feeds on your desire to be seen as enlightened. It whispers that you are chosen, different, and above those still trapped in ignorance. Yet that very whisper becomes the chain that binds your spirit to illusion. When the ego begins to crave admiration for being spiritual, it no longer serves your awakening. It serves the counterfeit light, the imitation of truth that feeds on pride and self-importance. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the secret of the demiurge's rule. It keeps you unconscious by making you believe you are already free. You meditate, you study, you speak of love and light, but beneath the surface, a subtle hunger grows, the need to be recognized as awakened. The moment you seek to prove your enlightenment, you fall into the final trap. The ego, in its clever disguise, transforms your inner search into a spiritual performance. You may wear the robes of wisdom, but within, pride still holds the throne. Jung's insight reminds us that true awakening cannot coexist with superiority, for enlightenment dissolves the need to compare, compete, or control. The demiurge symbolizes this false divinity, the illusion that separation and hierarchy define reality. It rules not through power, but through your belief that you must become more to be whole. Yet the awakened soul sees that wholeness was never lost, only hidden behind layers of identity and self-importance. The more you chase being special, the further you drift from truth. The counterfeit spirit thrives on this chase. It feeds on your image of being good, pure, and evolved, while keeping you trapped in spiritual pride. Jung's path of spiritual wisdom teaches that light cannot truly shine while you are obsessed with being seen. The true light does not boast. It simply illuminates. This is the final illusion that stops many on the path of spiritual awakening, the subtle transformation of humility into self-worship. The seeker becomes trapped in their own reflection, mistaking the echo of the ego for the voice of the soul. The ego says, "I have found God," while the soul whispers, "I have only remembered what I am." To awaken is not to destroy the ego, but to see through its disguise, to recognize the hunger for validation and gently dissolve it with awareness. As Lao Tzu said, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened." When you see through the ego's need to be divine, you begin to experience divinity itself, not as something earned, but as something remembered. Real awakening begins when you stop needing to prove you have awakened. It happens in silence, in humility, in the spaces where you no longer seek to impress, but to understand. You begin to realize that peace is not found in recognition, but in surrender. And the light you once chased has always been within you, waiting for you to stop performing and start seeing. In that stillness, the demiurge's illusions dissolve, and the soul finally breathes in its natural state of unity, freedom, and truth. 4. The trap of duality. Carl Jung once warned that the greatest obstacle to true spiritual awakening is the mind's obsession with duality, the endless battle between light and dark, good and evil, awakened and asleep. When you begin your journey into spirituality, you may believe that the goal is to overcome darkness and reach the light. But the very act of resisting darkness or chasing light actually strengthens the illusion you seek to escape. Every time you identify yourself as awakened and others as asleep, or label one part of you as good and another as bad, you remain trapped in the same labyrinth of opposites, where the ego thrives by creating conflict. The ego feeds on polarity, because it keeps your attention divided, making you believe that progress lies in fighting harder for one side, when in truth, both sides belong to the same illusion. Jung understood this deeply when he said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." His message was clear. True enlightenment is not found by denying your shadow, but by meeting it with awareness. If you only pursue light, you create a fragile identity built on avoidance. You call it spiritual growth, but what you are really doing is protecting yourself from seeing your own pain. You tell yourself you are purifying your energy, yet secretly, you are building a spiritual ego that feels superior, enlightened, and chosen. This is the most dangerous illusion when spirituality becomes another mask for fear. You see it when you judge those who seem unconscious, or when you panic because your vibration feels low, as if peace were something to maintain through constant control. In those moments, your spirituality has turned into performance, and awakening becomes a competition. But the truth is, resistance to illusion, fighting darkness, or seeking light actually feeds the illusion itself, because what you resist persists, and what you chase keeps you running in circles. Imagine walking through a maze where you keep running toward bright corridors and away from dark ones. You may believe you are progressing, but you are still within the same walls, moving endlessly without escape. The moment you stop running and turn inward, you see that the maze only exists in your mind. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of seeing through illusion without judgment. The moment you stop labeling your experiences as light or dark, right or wrong, and instead witness them as expressions of the same consciousness, you step outside the maze entirely. Real spiritual awakening is not about choosing sides. It is about seeing the unity behind opposites. You do not become holy by destroying your shadow. You become whole by embracing it. This shift begins subtly. Instead of asking, "How do I eliminate fear, anger, or jealousy?" you ask, "What are these feelings trying to reveal about the parts of me I've abandoned?" With that question, your inner war begins to dissolve. You stop trying to purify yourself into perfection and start seeing that everything within you, light and dark alike, belongs to the same sacred awareness. As you integrate your shadow, spirituality becomes grounded, humble, and real. You no longer seek to escape the world, but to see it clearly, to walk in it with open eyes. In this clarity, peace arises not from control, but from understanding. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom teaches that freedom does not come from defeating illusion, but from seeing through it. When you stop resisting, when you no longer glorify the light or fear the dark, you return to the awareness that holds both without conflict. That awareness is your true nature, silent, vast, and free. And the moment you rest in it, the final trap of duality dissolves, leaving only what has always been here: stillness, wholeness, and truth. Do you recognize how duality keeps you trapped between light and shadow, never truly free? If this message resonates with you, declare it in the comments below. I rise above duality. Let it be your reminder that true spiritual awakening begins when you transcend the illusion of opposites. 5. True Gnosis, seeing without filters. True Gnosis is not about belief or intellectual understanding. It is about direct perception, the ability to see reality without distortion, beyond the lens of ego and illusion. When your awareness becomes free from the constant commentary of the mind, You begin to witness life as it truly is, not as your thoughts want it to be. You stop interpreting and start experiencing. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." In spirituality, this inner vision is the key to awakening. It is not achieved by collecting ideas or memorizing doctrines, but by dissolving every barrier that separates you from truth itself. The false light of the world, the seductive glow of appearances, power, and ego can only reflect but never create. It mirrors fragments of truth, yet lacks the living essence of it. The true light has no opposite, no imitation, no form. It simply is the silent awareness behind all existence. In spiritual development, the greatest danger is not ignorance, but misperception. Many seekers mistake information for transformation, knowledge for wisdom, and self-image for truth. This is what Jung warned about the final trap on the path of awakening. When the ego begins to wear the mask of enlightenment, it gathers spiritual concepts, memorizes sacred phrases, and convinces itself that awakening has already been achieved. But this is illusion disguised as insight. True gnosis is not found in accumulation, but in surrender, the quiet death of all false certainty. When you stop needing to know and start allowing yourself to be, the illusion of separation fades away. To see clearly is to no longer identify with the stories of the mind. You begin to perceive not as the thinker, but as pure awareness itself, where nothing needs to be grasped or claimed. Every emotion, thought, and experience then becomes a sacred mirror, showing you the layers of consciousness that still seek healing. The false light will tempt you with feelings of superiority, with the notion that you have finally arrived. Yet the real light humbles you. It dismantles every identity, every spiritual label, every illusion of mastery, until nothing remains but the truth that was always there. Awakening is not the discovery of something new. It is the remembrance of what has always been. Seeing without filters means to live with eyes unclouded by desire or fear, to recognize divinity in everything without clinging to form. When you stop chasing enlightenment as a distant goal and begin resting in the awareness that you already are the light, illusion loses its grip on you. This is the secret of true gnosis, to unlearn everything false so that what is real may finally reveal itself in the silent clarity of your being. 6. The counterfeit heaven. Even bliss and revelation can be deceptive, because the moment you begin to feel that you have arrived, the false light starts to weave its comfort around you. It tells you that you are awakened, chosen, or superior, feeding your ego with gentle whispers that feel divine but are designed to distract you from true transformation. Carl Jung, in his profound insight into human nature, once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." When your spiritual path becomes only soothing and never challenging, you have entered what mystics call the counterfeit heaven, a place where the ego disguises itself as enlightenment. This false light doesn't liberate you. It entertains you. It makes you addicted to the next mystical experience, the next revelation, the next sign from the universe, convincing you that awakening is found in the extraordinary rather than the ordinary. The demiurge, the symbol of illusion and control, thrives in this state. It keeps seekers forever circling the light without ever stepping into its truth. You may find yourself collecting spiritual labels: old soul, starseed, chosen one, empath, believing they make you special. But in reality, each title becomes another mask that hides your authentic self. Jung warned us of this subtle trap when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." True awakening isn't about appearing enlightened. It's about dismantling every illusion that keeps you separate from life. The more you chase divine experiences for validation, the more you feed the very ego you were meant to transcend. This is why spiritual wisdom always humbles you. It strips away your spiritual pride and brings you face to face with your humanity. The false light says, "You are perfect just as you are." Real light says, "There is more to unlearn." The false light promises pleasure, recognition, and superiority. True awakening leads you into silence, simplicity, and presence. It does not flatter your mind. It dissolves it. When your spirituality becomes about feeling special instead of becoming free, you are living in the counterfeit heaven, a beautiful illusion that feels good but traps you in endless self-reflection without real growth. The only way out of this final trap is through awareness. Notice where your spirituality becomes performance: when you post every revelation, when you compare your awakening to others, or when you secretly crave acknowledgement for being different. Remember that enlightenment is not a badge. It is a quiet return to authenticity. The path of awakening is not about chasing more light, but learning to hold the darkness without running from it. As Socrates said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." When you can rest in that emptiness without fear, you are no longer deceived by false light. You stop seeking to become spiritual and start allowing yourself to be aware, grounded, compassionate, and real. In this quiet state, the illusion of the demiurge fades. You no longer need to be seen as awakened. You simply are awake. The addiction to mystical highs loses its grip, replaced by a calm acceptance of life's simplicity. Real spiritual wisdom does not shout, it breathes. It teaches you to listen more than you speak, to forgive more than you explain, and to live truthfully rather than appear enlightened. And when you embody that truth, the false heaven collapses, the final trap breaks, and your spiritual awakening finally becomes real. If you feel called to see beyond illusion and awaken to true light, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Together, let's seek the wisdom that leads us beyond the counterfeit heaven. 7. Liberation through stillness and remembrance. True spirituality is not a quest for something distant, but a deep remembrance of what has always been present within you. Awakening is not found through seeking. It unfolds through remembering. Beneath every thought and emotion lies a silent awareness, untouched by time or struggle. As Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." You do not dissolve illusion by fighting it, but by quietly withdrawing your attention from it. The illusion thrives on your energy, on your desire to fix, prove, or control. When you stop feeding it with attention, it fades naturally, like mist under the morning sun. Stillness becomes your liberation, because it reconnects you to the essence that never moved, never wavered, never ceased to be whole. In the silence of true awareness, you begin to see that everything you sought outside was a reflection of what already existed within. Spiritual awakening is not a process of accumulation. It is a process of remembering. You strip away the layers of noise, fear, and identity until what remains is pure consciousness. Jung understood that the final trap on the path of spirituality is the illusion of mastery, the belief that awakening means conquering yourself. But the real awakening is the surrender of control, the recognition that you are already what you seek. The ego wants to struggle against darkness, but the soul knows that light and shadow are one dance. Liberation does not come from denial, but from acceptance so deep that even illusion is embraced and therefore transformed. Stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness without form, presence without effort. When you rest in this space, you remember your origin. You realize that peace is not something to earn. It is something to allow. Awareness itself becomes your teacher, your sanctuary, your guide. Spirituality is not an escape from the world. It is a remembering of the divine in every moment of it. The more you rest in awareness, the less power illusion holds over you. The shadows lose meaning when you stop shining your fear upon them. You begin to see the perfection in what once seemed broken, the beauty in what once seemed ordinary. This is the quiet revolution of consciousness. You awaken not by doing more, but by being more. Stillness becomes your greatest act of remembrance. When you stop searching and start seeing, when you stop reaching and start resting, illusion dissolves on its own. You begin to remember that the light you've been chasing was never lost. It was simply hidden behind the noise of your own seeking. True spiritual awakening happens not through striving, but through surrender, not through effort, but through awareness. In stillness, you return to the truth that everything you thought you had to find, you already are. 8. The real light and the end of seeking. The final realization in spirituality is not about reaching enlightenment, but seeing that it was never something to attain in the first place. The truth is that awakening isn't a destination, but the awareness that has always been present, the silent witness behind your thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. It is what sees, but cannot be seen. This awareness is timeless, unchanging, and free from the illusions that the mind creates. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In this understanding, awakening is not about escaping reality or achieving perfection, but recognizing that the light you seek is already shining within you. You are not a seeker chasing truth. You are truth itself, observing the endless play of light and shadow through consciousness. The greatest trap on the path of spiritual development is the illusion of progress, the belief that you must chase enlightenment, that you must meditate longer, read more, or ascend higher to become divine. This trap feeds the ego, which survives through the act of seeking, always convincing you that you are one step away from awakening. Yet the more you chase, the further you drift from stillness. The ego disguises itself as a spiritual self, proud of its knowledge and its discipline, believing it has reached higher levels of consciousness. But real awareness is not found through effort. It arises in the moment you stop trying to become something other than what you are. The light of truth doesn't demand you to strive. It asks you to surrender. When the seeker disappears, the seeing remains. The illusion of enlightenment often seduces many sincere souls. They feel they must reach a final state, a supreme level of consciousness where suffering no longer exists. But that idea itself is born of duality. The mind creates a future where awakening awaits, but true light exists only here, now. It is the simple, wordless recognition of what has always been. When even the desire to be awakened dissolves, what remains is pure consciousness still, vast, unmovable. It watches the rise and fall of thoughts without judgment, the dance of emotion without attachment, the coming and going of life without fear. The mind will never understand it, for the mind itself is the veil that covers it. In the end, the real light is not something you find, but something you remember. It was never hidden, only overlooked by the constant noise of striving. When you stop seeking, you begin to see. When you stop identifying with the seeker, you awaken to the truth that you were never lost. Awakening is not a peak, it is a presence. It is not an achievement, it is awareness itself, vast and silent, watching through your eyes and breathing through your life. When the illusion of enlightenment fades, only truth remains unchanging, eternal, and free. Now, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let your spirit return to stillness. Feel the difference between chasing the light and being the light. As you release the endless seeking, your true illumination begins to rise from within. Repeat after me. I am no longer searching. I have found the light within me. If this message resonates, like, subscribe, and share your reflection in the comments below, so together we can walk this path of spiritual wisdom. True spiritual awakening isn't about escaping reality, but seeing through its illusions with clarity and courage. As Carl Jung warned, the greatest trap lies in believing you've reached enlightenment while your ego still quietly rules. Real growth happens when you face your shadows, integrate your pain, and live consciously in truth. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone on their awakening journey, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming explorations into the depth of the soul.